Abbott. You probably know that in Harry Potter there are pure-blood families like the Malfoys, the Blacks, or even the Weasleys. Yeah, shocking. But what you might not know is that in the 1930s, a deeply prejudiced wizard named Cantankerous Nott sat down, grabbed a quill, and published what he called the Sacred Pure-Blood Directory, better known as the Sacred 28. Basically, if you were on this list, your great-great-grandparents were all witches and wizards. But if your name wasn't on it, you'd be judged for mixing with muggles. Very Malfoy energy. And opening the Sacred 28 list, Abbott. They ruined the vibe instantly. They're technically ancient, technically pureblood, until the early 1930s when the Abbotts collectively decided that marrying muggles and half-bloods was in fact fine, actually. Scandalous. Their most famous descendant, Hannah Abbott, attended Hogwarts with Harry Potter and embodied everything pure-blood purists hate. Hufflepuff loyalty, kindness, and zero interest in supremacy nonsense. She joined Dumbledore's army, fought in the Battle of Hogwarts, and lost her mother to Death Eaters, making it very clear where the family stood when things got real. Hannah later married Neville Longbottom, officially sealing the Abbott legacy as emotionally healthy and wildly disappointing to pure-blood extremists. Other Abbotts exist, including a Hogwarts portrait named Gifford Abbott and Theophilus Abbott, an American wizard possibly related to the clan. In short, the Abbotts prove that common sense ages far better than blood purity, and also that being first on the list doesn't mean you understood the assignment. Avery. Avery is one of those sacred 28 names that sounds important until you realize their main hobby was lurking behind masks and calling it legacy. Known for being chronically on the wrong side of history, the Averys show up in Voldemort's orbit more than they show up in anything respectable. An Avery was part of Voldemort's inner circle in the First War, and another crawled back in the Second War with the classic excuse, "I was under the Imperius curse." Voldemort, master of unforgivable curses, was not emotionally moved. The Avery brand is basically this: pedigree, entitlement, and zero backbone when consequences arrive. Pure blood obsession didn't make them powerful, it just made them predictable. Black. If wizarding families were fireworks, the Blacks would be the kind that explode beautifully and then set the house on fire. Obsessed with lineage, image, and reminding everyone they were better than them, the House of Black treated blood purity like a competitive sport. Their family motto, toujours pur, wasn't aspirational, it was aggressive. For centuries, they curated marriages, hoarded dark artifacts, and blasted relatives off the family tapestry like unwanted stains. That tapestry, hanging in 12 Grimmauld Place, doubled as both genealogy and warning label. Then Sirius Black happened, sorted into Gryffindor, allergic to supremacy, best friends with James Potter, and a proud member of the Order of the Phoenix. Basically, the family's worst nightmare, wrapped in leather jackets and rebellion. Meanwhile, cousins Bellatrix Lestrange and Narcissa Malfoy went all in on Voldemort, proving the family could still produce top-tier villains. In the end, the Blacks spent centuries protecting their legacy, only for it to collapse under its own arrogance. Tragic, hilarious, extremely on-brand. Bulstrode. The Bulstrode family technically qualified for the Sacred 28, and honestly, everyone seems a bit confused about how. They were mostly pure blood right up until the point where they very clearly weren't. Like the Abbotts, Bulstrodes began marrying muggles and half-bloods shortly after the list was published, quietly disqualifying themselves while still enjoying the label. Their most famous descendant, Millicent Bulstrode, attended Hogwarts with Harry, and is remembered less for blood status and more for accidentally turning Hermione Granger into a cat via a Polyjuice potion disaster. It's unclear if the Bulstrodes ever cared deeply about purity politics, but by Millicent's era the family's pure reputation was already extinct. Which is fair, no one was flexing that surname anyway. Burke. If Hogwarts had a gift shop for cursed nightmares, the Burke family would be running it. Pure blood by lineage, morally bankrupt by choice. The Burkes made their fortune through Borgin and Burke's, Nocturne Alley's favorite place to buy objects that whisper, bite, or ruin your life. Caractacus Burke didn't just sell dark artifacts, he lowballed them, famously buying Salazar Slytherin's locket from Voldemort's desperate mother for spare change and zero shame. Later, the shop conveniently supplied the vanishing cabinet Draco Malfoy used to smuggle Death Eaters into Hogwarts. Because why stop at unethical when you can be catastrophic? Even their portrait, Elizabeth Burke, spent her afterlife encouraging Slytherins to be nasty to mudbloods. The Burkes weren't loyal loyal to blood, ideology, or dark lords, only to profit. If evil had a loyalty card, they'd already have a free curse. Carrow. The Carrow family proves that pure-blood fanaticism can, in fact, get worse. Their dark streak goes back to the 1920s, with ties to Grindelwald, but they truly peaked in cruelty with siblings Alecto and Amicus, two Death Eaters who treated Hogwarts like a torture workshop. Appointed professors during Voldemort's takeover, they used the Cruciatus curse as a teaching method and called it education. Even by Death Eater standards, they were considered excessive. When everyone hates you, including other villains, that's not legacy, that's a warning label. Crouch. The Crouch family is what happens when you mistake rules for parenting. Ancient, pure blood, and deeply respected. They sat comfortably among Britain's wizarding elite until everything exploded. Bartimus Crouch Sr. built his legacy on law, order, and punishing literally everyone, which made him powerful at the ministry and emotionally unavailable at home. Shockingly, this did not produce a well-adjusted child. His son Barty Crouch Jr. responded by becoming an unhinged Death Eater, getting sent to Azkaban, then escaping via a polyjuice potion swap involving his dying mother. Healthy family dynamics. Disguised as Mad-Eye Moody, Barty Jr. infiltrated Hogwarts, rigged the Goblet of Fire, traumatized an entire school year, and personally delivered Harry Potter to Voldemort. Eventually, he murdered his own father and received the Dementor's kiss, neatly wiping out the entire Crouch bloodline. Once admired for discipline and respectability, the family ended as a cautionary tale. Pure blood doesn't prevent catastrophic parenting or spectacular self-destruction. Fawley. The Fawley family proves that being on the Sacred 28 didn't require drama, just persistence and a talent for not being noticed. Pure blood frequently sorted into Hufflepuff and aggressively mild. The Fawleys were more about paperwork than power. Their most notable member, Hector Fawley, served as Minister for Magic in the 1920s and 30s, right before Grindelwald caused chaos, yet somehow managed to leave absolutely no impression. No Dark Lords, no rebellions, no scandals. By wizarding standards, that's either admirable or suspicious. Flint. The Flint family is ancient, pure blood, and best remembered for having the subtlety of a bludger to the face. While their lineage stretches back centuries, most people hear Flint and immediately picture Marcus Flint, Slytherin's aggressively violent Quidditch captain, who treated rules like optional suggestions. Historically, the family did have influence. Josephina Flint served as Minister for Magic in the early 1800s, a rare achievement that deserves credit. They also married into the House of Black when Ursula Flint wed Phineas Nigellus Black, securing respectable connections without the drama. The Flints maintained pure blood status, but never reached Malfoy-level notoriety or Black family infamy. Instead, they mastered quiet ambition, relevant, connected, and just intimidating enough to avoid scrutiny. Subtle? Never. Effective? Unfortunately, yes. Gaunt. If the Sacred 28 had a lesson in what not to do carved into stone, it would be the Gaunt family. Descended directly from Salazar Slytherin and Cadmus Peverell, the Gaunts had everything pure-blood fanatics dream of, and then spectacularly ruined it. Obsessed with lineage, they treated blood purity like a DIY project and promptly turned their family tree into a circle. Cousin marriages became tradition, mental stability became optional, and basic hygiene apparently offensive. Once wealthy and powerful, the Gaunts spiraled into isolation and poverty, ending up in a collapsing shack near Little Hangleton that screamed ancestral shame. Marvolo Gaunt ruled through violence and paranoia. His daughter, Merope, lived abused and broken, and her brother Morphin took the blame for a murder his nephew, Tom Riddle, actually committed. Yes, that Tom Riddle. The family also guarded the Chamber of Secrets for generations, and preserved the ability to speak Parseltongue, clinging to it like proof they were still special. They even kept Slytherin's locket, later turned into a Horcrux because of course they did. By the end, the Gaunts had achieved the ultimate irony, a pure-blood legacy so obsessed with survival that it produced the very wizard who destroyed it completely. Greengrass. The Greengrass family is what happens when a pure-blood line quietly realizes it's been on the wrong side of history and decides to stop. Originally proud members of the Sacred 28, they later evolved into something shocking, common sense. Their biggest plot twist came with Astoria Greengrass, who married Draco Malfoy and then proceeded to reject the entire anti-Muggle playbook. She even raised Scorpius with compassion and tolerance, much to the visible discomfort of the Malfoy dinner table. The Greengrasses never loudly supported Voldemort, never chased Dark Lords, glory and never imploded spectacularly. And here's the real evidence Draco actually changed. Scorpius's best friend at Hogwarts is Albus Potter. Yes, that Potter. If that's not a character arc, nothing is. Honestly, good for them. Lestrange. The Lestrange family is pure-blood elitism turned into a lifestyle choice, and then taken way too far. Filthy rich and proudly tangled through marriages with families like the Blacks and Rosiers. The Lestranges treated inbreeding like tradition, not a warning sign. Their fascination with dark magic was less academic curiosity and more hobby that ruins everyone's life. Historically, they produced figures like Rodolphus Lestrange, a 19th century minister for magic, and Leta Lestrange, whose tragic Hogwarts years accidentally got Newt Scamander expelled. But let's be honest, the name became legendary thanks to Bellatrix Lestrange, born Bellatrix Black. She married Rodolphus purely to tick the respectable pure-blood husband box, while saving her actual passion for Voldemort. Romantic, I know. Together, the Lestranges became some of the most devoted and unhinged Death Eaters, specializing in torture, murder, and screaming enthusiasm. In the end, their obsession with purity consumed them entirely. No heirs, no redemption, just a legacy proving that madness unfortunately can be hereditary. Longbottom. The Longbottom family is proof that being pureblood doesn't automatically turn you into a lunatic with a family tapestry and a cursed collection. The Longbottoms built their reputation on service, bravery, and actually doing their jobs, an extremely rare flex among the Sacred 28. Many became aurors and ministry officials, known for integrity rather than superiority complexes. And then there's Neville Longbottom, the boy who lost his toad, forgot passwords, and somehow ended up destroying Voldemort's final Horcrux. Character development of the century. Neville's parents, Frank and Alice, were brilliant aurors before being tortured into insanity by Death Eaters, leaving Neville to be raised by his terrifyingly strict grandmother, Augusta. Expectations were high, confidence was low. Courage, however, was quietly loading in the background. By the Battle of Hogwarts, Neville went from background character to absolute menace, killing Nagini and leading the resistance inside Hogwarts itself. The Longbottoms never obsessed over blood purity. They were on the Sacred 28 by ancestry alone, not ideology. In a wizarding world addicted to arrogance, the Longbottoms accidentally became the gold standard. Decent, brave, and devastating when it actually mattered. Macmillan. If the Sacred 28 were a party, the Macmillans would be the ones standing near the snacks, quietly judging everyone else. Ancient and pure blood, yes, but aggressively neutral. No Dark Lords, no manifestos, no cursed heirlooms screaming in the attic. Their standout member, Ernie Macmillan, proudly reminded people his family was pure blood, and then immediately joined Dumbledore's army just to keep things balanced. A Hufflepuff through and through, Ernie backed Dumbledore during Voldemort's rise and proved that ancestry didn't require cruelty. The Macmillans showed you could be on the list, stay respectable, and still avoid becoming a walking red flag. Malfoy. The Malfoys are hands down the most dramatic pureblood family on the Sacred 28, and it's all thanks to the very first Malfoy who ever decided proximity to power was better than actually earning it. That honor goes to Armand Malfoy, who arrived in Britain with William the Conqueror and immediately mastered the Malfoy family motto: stand next to the throne, not on it. He flattered Muggle kings, collected land, and secured a lifestyle that future Malfoys would coast on for centuries. From there, the formula never changed. Malfoy Manor became less a home and more a permanent networking venue for influential people and morally questionable decisions. Generation after generation was sorted into Slytherin, raised on ambition, manipulation, and an almost medical allergy to humility. And by the modern era, Lucius Malfoy became the family's modern mascot. Wealthy, loud, and deeply committed to being intimidating right up until real danger appeared, Narcissa perfected selective loyalty, and Draco inherited the arrogance without the stomach for actual evil. When Voldemort stopped looking like a winning investment, the Malfoys instantly rebranded as just trying to survive. And the final insult, after centuries guarding pure blood, Draco married Astoria Greengrass and raised Scorpius to be kind and be best friends with Harry Potter's son. Lucius Lucius is somewhere screaming internally and pretending this was always part of the plan. Nott, pure blood, Slytherin, and allergic to attention. The Nott name has always hovered uncomfortably close to power without ever stepping fully into the light. Generations of Notts passed through Hogwarts, keeping their hands down and their opinions sharp. Cantankerous Nott is widely believed to have written the sacred 28 itself, which tracks, because it reads like something penned by a bitter man with too much time and way too many grudges. In Harry's year, Theodore Nott was quiet, intelligent, and notably uninterested in Draco's theatrics, despite his father being an enthusiastic Death Eater loyal to Voldemort. When the war ended, the Notts survived the only way they knew how, by saying nothing, doing nothing, and pretending they were never involved. Cowardly? Maybe. Effective? Unfortunately. Ollivander. Long before wizarding families started arguing about blood status, the Ollivanders were busy doing something far more dangerous, handing everyone a weapon. Their lineage dates back to 382 BC, making them older than the Ministry of Magic and most family grudges combined. Legend says an early Ollivander arrived in Britain with the Romans, took one look around and thought, yes, this place needs better wands. From that moment on, the name Ollivander became synonymous with wand-making perfection. Generations refined the craft until Garrick Ollivander turned it into an art form. Quiet, obsessive, and slightly unsettling, he personally made the wands of Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort, complete with twin phoenix feather cores, accidentally binding their destinies forever. Oops. Unlike other pureblood families, the Ollivanders avoided politics, prejudice, and Dark Lord loyalty. They sold to everyone. Gryffindor heroes, Slytherin villains, Ministry officials. Same smile, same receipt. While others fought over superiority, the Ollivanders calmly supplied the tools that made the wars possible. Honestly, terrifying business model. Parkinson. The Parkinson family loved the idea of being important far more than the work required to, actually be important. An old pure-blood name with fading relevance. Their modern reputation rests almost entirely on Pansy Parkinson. Slytherin, Draco Malfoy enthusiast, faced like a pug, and living proof that confidence and courage are not the same thing. Her proudest historical moment was suggesting Harry Potter be handed over to Voldemort during the Battle of Hogwarts. Brave stuff. Centuries later, Perseus Parkinson served as Minister for Magic. But by Harry's era, the family legacy had devolved into gossip, sneering, and shouting from the back row. More attitude than achievement. Pruitt. The Pruitt family technically qualified as pureblood and then immediately ignored everything pureblood culture stood for. Closely related to the Weasleys, they valued courage over pedigree and decency over delusions of superiority. Scandalous behavior for sacred 28 standards. Their most famous descendant, Molly Pruitt, married Arthur Weasley, a union that likely caused several aristocratic monocles to shatter on impact. Her brothers, Gideon and Fabian Pruitt, joined the Order of the Phoenix and were brutally killed during the First Wizarding War. A loss so heavy, even Mad-Eye Moody kept their names engraved as a reminder. Red hair, big noses, and absolutely zero tolerance for blood purity nonsense. The Pruitts proved that legacy isn't about keeping bloodlines clean, but about standing your ground, while the so-called noble families lost their mind. Rosier. The Rosiers were old, elegant, and extremely confident that being French and pure blood somehow made them unstoppable. Spoiler, it did not. Proud of their lineage and deeply invested in dark politics, they managed to back every wrong wizarding trend. One Rosier supported Grindelwald in the early 1900s, and decades later, Evan Rosier joined Voldemort's Death Eaters, famously losing a duel to Mad-Eye Moody after managing to remove part of Moody's nose. Impressive, but not survivable. The Rosiers believed ancestry equaled immunity. History disagreed. Rowell. The Rowell family mastered the rare art of making the same bad choices across multiple centuries. In the 1700s, Damocles Rowell served as Minister for Magic and decided Muggles were the problem. Classic overcorrection. Lots of paranoia, zero chill. Fast forward, and Thorfinn Rowell kept the tradition alive by becoming a Death Eater under Voldemort, bringing brute force where thinking might have helped. To really seal the deal, Euphemia Rowell later became guardian to Delphine, Voldemort's daughter. Ancient lineage, impressive consistency, supremacy, and absolutely no evidence that wisdom improves with age. Selwyn. The Selwyns were pure-blood aristocracy with a capital A, status, influence, and the kind of name Voldemort himself liked to drop for credibility, which should definitely already worry you. Ministry adjacent and painfully self-important, they carried just enough clout to be dangerous. At least one Selwyn became a Death Eater and helped kidnap Luna Lovegood, instantly upgrading the family name from respectable to actively awful. And then there's Dolores Umbridge, who claimed Selwyn ancestry, never proven, but deeply believable given her obsession with authority and blood status. The Selwyn legacy boils down to this: impressive name, terrible judgment, and a habit of choosing the worst possible side while insisting they're the good ones. Shacklebolt. Pure blood, yes. Smug about it? Absolutely not. The Shacklebolts somehow dodged the Sacred 28 ego epidemic and focused on competence instead. Their crown jewel, Kingsley Shacklebolt, was a top-tier Auror, Order of the Phoenix member, and literal bodyguard to the Muggle Prime Minister, because someone had to be the adult in the room. After Voldemort fell, Kingsley became Minister for Magic, proving a radical idea. Leadership works better when you're not racist, corrupt, or unhinged. Truly shocking behavior for a pure-blood family. Shaffic. The Shaffics are the Sacred 28's greatest magic trick, being important and then vanishing completely. Confirmed purebloods when the directory dropped in the 1930s and then poof, gone. No scandals, no Dark Lords, no embarrassing heirs shouting at school children. Their names suggest non-British roots, possibly tied to ancient magical trade networks long before the Ministry tried to organize everything. Whether they intermarried, moved abroad, or simply chose peace over pure blood nonsense, the Shaffics pulled off the smartest move on the list. They left before things got stupid. Slughorn. If pure blood families were potions, the Slughorns would be liquid luck. Not flashy, not evil, just suspiciously well positioned at all times. Wealthy and pure blood, yes, but far more interested in influence than ideology. Their most famous member, Horace Slughorn, perfected the art of surviving history by knowing the right people and never picking the wrong side too loudly. As head of Slytherin and Potions Master twice, Slughorn collected talented students the way others collected dark artifacts. His infamous Slug Club included Lily Evans and Tom Riddle, which in hindsight feels like inviting Felix Felicis and Poison to the same dinner party and hoping for balance. He tolerated Muggleborns, admired brilliance over blood, and still managed to accidentally give Voldemort Horcrux advice. Oops. The Slughorns weren't fanatics, they were opportunists with manners. Proof that ambition doesn't always lead to tyranny, sometimes it just leads to exclusive sofas, candied pineapple, and being on the right side of history. Eventually, Travers. Pure blood status, zero charm, maximum brutality. That's the Travers brand. While other families hid behind politeness, the Travers name showed up where things got bloody. A Death Eater known simply as Travers helped murder the McKinnon family during the First Wizarding War, proving subtlety was never on the syllabus. Somehow, the line survived long enough for Torquil Travers to resurface in the 1990s as head of magical law enforcement, which is concerning. The Travers strategy was simple: commit atrocities for Lord Voldemort, then use influence to dodge consequences. History repeated, lessons were not learned. Weasley. If the Sacred 28 were a snooty dinner party, the Weasleys were the family everyone whispered about because they talked to Muggles. And Merlin forbid, liked them? Impeccable pure-blood lineage, absolutely zero interest in acting superior about it. Naturally, this made them public enemy number one for families who mistook cruelty for class. They lived in the Burrow, a house held together by magic, love, and whatever Arthur Weasley dragged home from the Muggle world. Arthur himself collected plugs like rare artifacts, while Molly ran the place with terrifying efficiency and the quiet knowledge that she could defeat most dark witches using only rage and maternal instinct. 7 children followed: Bill, Charlie, Percy, Fred, George, Ron, and Ginny, each proving in their own way that courage, chaos, and questionable decision-making are hereditary. Nearly all of them fought Voldemort, joined the Order of the Phoenix, or married directly into the prophecy just to annoy the Malfoys one last time. They were mocked for hand-me-down robes, red hair, and an alarming lack of gold. And yet, when the war came, the Weasleys showed up every single time, together, loyal, and unbreakable. Funny how the so-called blood traitors ended up being the bravest, kindest, and most genuinely noble family on the entire list. Almost like blood purity was never the point. Yaxley. The Yaxleys were what happens when a pure blood family decides paperwork is just as evil as curses. Not much is known about their ancient glory, mostly because Corbin Yaxley did such an excellent job ruining the brand. A Death Eater in both wars, he skipped dramatic duels and went straight for the real villain arc, bureaucracy. While others waved wands, Yaxley smiled politely and passed laws that wrecked lives, infiltrating the ministry and turning magical law enforcement into Voldemort's customer service desk from hell. Raids, arrests, torture, signed, stamped, and approved. After the Dark Lord fell, Yaxley landed in Azkaban, proving once again that pure blood pairs terribly with absolute power. A cautionary tale, really. Sometimes the scariest Death Eaters don't shout, they file forms. And if you survive this wicked list, as Ron would say, then you're clearly ready for more Potterhead gossip. All 12 richest wizarding families in Harry Potter Explained. Click now before Ron remembers Malfoy had a mansion and still complained.